Picture a world where ambition drives every decision, where success is measured not by the quality of your relationships, but by the number of achievements on your resume. This is the reality for many modern families, where parents juggle careers, finances, and the constant pursuit of more. But what happens when the most precious aspects of life, the love and attention of a child, become overshadowed by the relentless chase for success? Today, we share the poignant and eye-opening story of Jake and Emily, a couple whose professional ambitions blinded them to the growing struggles of their daughter, Ava. This story is more than just a narrative. It's a profound reflection on the choices we make and the unseen costs they carry. It's about recognizing the subtle signs of distress, valuing the bonds of family, and understanding that the true measure of success is not found in material wealth, but in the moments spent caring for the ones we love. Jake and Emily's journey is a cautionary tale, one that reveals how easily our priorities can shift, and how, without realizing it, we can lose sight of what truly matters. Our story begins in the bustling city of Seattle, where Jake and Emily epitomize the American dream. Both were successful, driven, and admired for their professional achievements. Their love story began in a shared pursuit of career goals. But as they built their life together, they unknowingly began to neglect their most important role, being present for their child. When Ava came into their lives, she brought joy and purpose, but also a challenge that they were not prepared for: the struggle to balance the demands of work with the needs of their growing family. As we dive into this emotional journey, we'll uncover the difficult choices and overlooked signs that led to a turning point in Jake and Emily's lives. Their story serves as a reminder that true love and commitment go beyond providing material comforts. It requires presence, empathy, and a willingness to listen, even when life feels too busy. It's a story of mistakes, redemption, and the resilience of the human spirit when faced with the consequences of misplaced priorities. If this story touches your heart or makes you reflect on your own life, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support enables us to continue sharing meaningful content that inspires personal growth and deeper connections. Also, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share a message of hope or affirmation, something like, "I choose to be fully present in the moments that matter most." Your words could be the encouragement someone else needs to hear today. Now let's embark on this journey together, starting with the life Jake and Emily built, and the decisions that shaped their path, unaware of the quiet cries for help from the one person who needed them the most. Jake and Emily had built their identities around the pursuit of success. They lived in Seattle, a city known for its thriving tech industry, ambitious culture, and unyielding pace. In this environment, career ambition was more than just a professional choice, it was a lifestyle. For Jake, working as a marketing executive at a major tech company, each day was a blend of meetings, strategic planning, and client negotiations. The stakes were always high, and the competition was fierce, pushing him to pour every ounce of energy into his job. He thrived on the rush of securing new deals, launching campaigns, and seeing tangible results from his hard work. Emily, a partner at a prestigious law firm, was equally driven. Her career had taken shape through long hours and relentless dedication, managing complex cases and winning legal battles that seemed impossible to conquer. She had climbed from an associate position to partner status in record time, a feat that brought admiration from colleagues and recognition across the legal community. Her work was more than a job, it was a source of pride, a symbol of her perseverance and intellectual strength. Like Jake, Emily was deeply embedded in the culture of success, and her professional life occupied not just her time, but her thoughts, aspirations, and even her conversations with loved ones. Their relationship blossomed in this shared context of ambition. Meeting at a corporate event, they were immediately drawn to each other's drive and determination. Their early courtship was not marked by leisurely dates or spontaneous getaways, but rather by late-night discussions about career goals, strategies for advancement, and the sacrifices necessary for success. It was an unconventional romance, built on mutual respect and a deep understanding of what it meant to pursue something bigger than oneself. This foundation brought them closer, but it also set the stage for a future filled with challenges they had not anticipated. As their relationship grew, so did their ambitions. After getting married, Jake and Emily fell into a rhythm where work dictated the pace of their lives. The idea of taking time off was almost unimaginable. There was always another project, another opportunity to chase, another client to impress. Vacations were rare, and when they did happen, work often intruded in the form of urgent emails or unexpected phone calls. Weekends became extensions of their work weeks, filled with preparations for upcoming meetings or catch-up sessions on tasks that had piled up during the week. The couple was well aware of the sacrifices they were making, but to them, it was all part of a larger plan. They had goals, financial security, career milestones, and the desire to one day enjoy a life of comfort and stability. They often spoke of someday, when they would finally be able to take a step back, slow down, and enjoy the fruits of their labor. However, as time passed, someday remained an elusive destination. Their schedules only grew busier, their responsibilities heavier, and their personal lives increasingly secondary to their professional obligations. The decision to delay starting a family was an easy one for Jake and Emily. It wasn't that they didn't want children. Rather, they believed that the timing had to be perfect. They told themselves that once they reached certain milestones, promotions, salary brackets, or the completion of major projects, then they could think about having a child. For years, this was the narrative they lived by, pushing the idea of parenthood further down the road while they focused on securing their careers. What they didn't realize was that this choice was slowly shaping their priorities and distancing them from experiences that could not be scheduled or postponed. The pressure to keep up with the demands of their jobs was not just external. It came from within as well. Jake and Emily prided themselves on their work ethic and considered themselves role models for others who aspired to achieve greatness. They believed that success required constant effort, and they were willing to make the necessary sacrifices to reach their goals. However, as they continued to pour themselves into their work, they began to adopt a transactional approach to life. Each moment was evaluated based on productivity, efficiency, and outcomes. Even their time together was treated as something to be managed and optimized, rather than enjoyed for its own sake. Friends and family began to notice the strain. There were missed family gatherings, declined invitations, and canceled plans. When they did manage to attend social events, their conversations often revolved around work rather than personal interests or shared experiences. The couple's world had become so wrapped up in their professional lives that it was difficult for them to separate their identities from their jobs. They often reassured themselves that these sacrifices were temporary and necessary for the future they were building, not realizing the silent toll it was taking on their well-being and relationships. Despite the outward appearance of a life on track, there were subtle signs that not everything was as it seemed. Both Jake and Emily began to experience burnout, though they rarely acknowledged it to each other. There were moments of fatigue that went beyond physical tiredness, seeping into their emotional and mental states. They began to feel disconnected, not only from their surroundings, but from each other. The once lively discussions about the future had turned into routine exchanges about schedules and deadlines. The spark that had initially brought them together was being overshadowed by the daily grind, leaving little room for spontaneity or genuine connection. Their lifestyle, while rewarding in terms of career achievements, was beginning to show its limitations. The lack of balance was most evident in the small, everyday moments, the dinners eaten in silence, the late nights working from home instead of spending time together, the constant interruptions from work calls, even during moments meant for relaxation. They had become so accustomed to this rhythm that they failed to notice how much it was affecting their personal lives. It wasn't until the topic of children came up again, years after their initial decision to delay, that Jake and Emily began to question their choices. By this time, many of their friends had already started families, sharing stories of first steps, school plays, and family vacations. The couple began to feel the subtle pangs of longing, a realization that perhaps they had been postponing something far more important. than they had understood. Emily, in particular, felt a growing desire to experience motherhood, a desire that began to outweigh her career aspirations. She started to imagine what it would be like to come home to a child, to share her life in a deeper, more meaningful way than through work achievements. As these thoughts began to take root, Emily made a choice that would change the course of their lives. She stopped taking birth control without discussing it with Jake. It wasn't an act of defiance, but rather a quiet hope that life would take over and show them a different path. She believed that if a child came into their lives, it would bring about the change they needed, forcing them to slow down and reassess their priorities. When she discovered she was pregnant, Emily was filled with both joy and anxiety. She wondered how they would manage, but also hoped that this new chapter would bring the balance they had long been searching for. Jake, upon hearing the news, experienced a mix of emotions. While he was thrilled at the thought of becoming a father, there was also a part of him that worried about the impact this would have on their careers. He questioned whether they were truly ready for such a significant change. Yet deep down, he knew that this might be exactly what they needed, a reason to shift their focus and learn to appreciate life beyond the boundaries of work. Their journey was about to take a dramatic turn, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about success, fulfillment, and what it truly means to be a family. When Emily discovered she was pregnant, the news came as a mix of joy, relief, and an underlying current of anxiety. For years, she and Jake had delayed starting a family, believing that there would eventually be a perfect moment when they were ready, financially secure, professionally accomplished, and emotionally prepared to embrace parenthood. But that moment had never quite materialized, and Emily's decision to stop taking birth control was a silent acknowledgement of the futility of waiting for everything to fall into place. Life, after all, often unfolds in ways we cannot predict or control. Jake's reaction to the pregnancy was similarly complex. Although thrilled at the prospect of fatherhood, he couldn't ignore the knot of worry that formed in his stomach. His first thoughts drifted not to the joys of having a child, but to the logistical challenges it would pose his demanding job, Emily's equally intense career, the house that would soon need baby-proofing, and the sudden shift from a life meticulously planned around work to one that would now include sleepless nights and diaper changes. He wondered if they could truly manage the balancing act, and what sacrifices would have to be made. As the months went by, the couple's focus began to shift, albeit slowly. Emily took a step back from her role at the law firm, reducing her hours and handing off some responsibilities to colleagues in preparation for maternity leave. This adjustment, although welcomed, felt unfamiliar and unsettling at times. Accustomed to the constant hustle and the satisfaction of winning cases, she struggled with the slower pace of life at home. Yet, every time she felt Ava move inside her, a sense of calm washed over her, reminding her why she had made the choice to embrace this new chapter. Jake, on the other hand, found it difficult to reduce his workload. Even as Emily's due date approached, he remained consumed by the demands of his position. There were always urgent matters to attend to: a marketing campaign that needed last-minute revisions, a client presentation that required extra preparation, or an out-of-town conference that he couldn't miss. He reassured himself that he was working this hard for his family's future, to provide the best life possible for his soon-to-arrive daughter. Yet, in doing so, he missed the subtle moments when Emily needed him the most. The quiet evenings when she longed for his presence, more than his promises of a bright future. The arrival of Ava was nothing short of life-changing. She came into the world one rainy morning in Seattle, filling the hospital room with her first cries, a sound that seemed to echo the beginnings of a new era for Jake and Emily. As they held their newborn daughter, a mix of wonder and responsibility washed over them. It was the kind of moment that shifts the ground beneath your feet, reshaping everything you thought you knew about love and priorities. In that instant, Jake felt a surge of protective instinct that made all of his work concerns seem insignificant in comparison. For Emily, there was a sense of completeness she hadn't known she was missing, a profound connection to this tiny human being that transcended any courtroom victory or career milestone. The first few weeks after Ava's birth were a blur of joy, exhaustion, and learning. Both parents quickly realized that no amount of planning could have fully prepared them for the reality of caring for a newborn. The sleepless nights, constant feedings, and emotional roller coaster were unlike anything they had experienced before. Emily found herself falling into a new routine that centered around Ava's needs. And while it was challenging, it also brought a sense of fulfillment she had not found in her professional life. There was a certain satisfaction in the simplicity of rocking her daughter to sleep, and the quiet moments spent just watching her breathe. Jake, however, struggled more with the transition. Though he had promised himself that he would step back from work to be more present at home, he found it difficult to disconnect. The demands of his job did not abate, and there were still calls to be taken, emails to answer, and projects that required his input. He often worked late into the night, even while Emily and Ava slept. The separation between his role as a father and his role as an executive was harder to navigate than he had anticipated. It wasn't long before Emily began to notice the strain it placed on their relationship. While Ava's arrival had undoubtedly brought them closer in some ways, it also exposed the underlying tensions that had been easy to ignore before. The unspoken agreement to prioritize work above all else had become unsustainable. Emily, who was now fully immersed in motherhood, began to feel the weight of carrying most of the parenting responsibilities. She understood that Jake was working hard for their future, but she also needed him to be present for the here and now. She began to resent the constant interruptions, the late nights spent alone, and the sense that even though their family had grown, their lifestyle had not truly changed. As Ava grew from a newborn into a curious toddler, her needs continued to evolve. The couple quickly learned that being parents required far more than providing material comforts. Ava needed time, attention, and the kind of emotional support that couldn't be outsourced or scheduled between meetings. Her first words, her first steps, and the little milestones that marked her development became sources of both joy and guilt for Jake and Emily. They were filled with pride each time she reached a new milestone, but there was also a lingering question. Were they truly present in these moments, or were they merely spectators in their daughter's life? The strain became most apparent when Ava reached school age. The couple enrolled her in a reputable private school, confident that she would thrive in an environment with small class sizes and individualized attention. Yet, almost immediately, her teachers began to notice some troubling signs. Ava often seemed distracted in class, her gaze drifting out the window while her classmates engaged in activities. When asked to participate, she did so reluctantly, and her work lacked the enthusiasm and effort expected of a child her age. There were also subtle signs of anxiety, a hesitation before answering questions, an unease around new people that hinted at deeper struggles. Jake and Emily initially brushed off these concerns as normal childhood adjustment. After all, Ava was still very young, and starting school could be overwhelming for any child. They reasoned that perhaps she just needed more time to adapt to the new routine, or maybe she was simply shy. But as the weeks turned into months, Ava's difficulties became more pronounced. Her teachers expressed concerns about her social interactions, noting that she tended to isolate herself during group activities and seemed uninterested in making friends. Her academic performance was also slipping, with her grades falling below average despite the extra help she received. At this point, the couple decided to take action, hiring a private tutor, Mr. Harris, who came highly recommended for his ability to work with young children. They hoped that by providing Ava with additional support, they could help her catch up academically and build her confidence. Mr. Harris began tutoring Ava in the afternoons, and for a while, it seemed to be making a difference. Her grades improved slightly, and she appeared more engaged during her lessons. Jake and Emily took this as a positive sign, believing that they were finally on the right path to helping their daughter succeed. However, they failed to see that Ava's struggles went beyond academics. The underlying issues were more complex, rooted in a deeper need for emotional connection and stability, things that couldn't be fully addressed by hiring a tutor or sending her to a prestigious school, while Jake and Emily continued to manage their careers. Thinking that their efforts were enough, Ava was left feeling increasingly lost and disconnected, a reality that would soon force the family to confront painful truths. As Ava grew, the challenge of juggling demanding careers with the responsibilities of parenting became more apparent for Jake and Emily. What had initially seemed like an adjustment phase gradually transformed into a persistent struggle to meet the needs of their daughter. While maintaining the pace of their professional lives, they both recognized that Ava's upbringing required more than material provisions or prestigious educational opportunities. It required emotional availability, something that was increasingly scarce in their household. The tension between work and family began to shape their daily routines. Mornings were rushed, with hurried breakfasts and last-minute preparations for the day ahead. Jake and Emily often found themselves scrambling to get Ava ready for school before rushing off to their respective offices. They reassured themselves that these sacrifices were part of building a stable future for their family. After all, wasn't that why they worked so hard? They told themselves that there would be time later to make up for the moments they were missing now. However, the imbalance became more pronounced as the months passed. Ava's behavior continued to reflect signs of distress that neither parent fully comprehended. She was often quiet, retreating to her room immediately after coming home from school. There were fewer smiles and giggles, replaced instead by a growing sense of isolation. When she did speak, her responses were brief, as if she was testing the waters to see if her parents would truly listen. During school meetings, Ava's teachers continued to express concern about her withdrawn nature and lack of participation. Emily, who took the lead in attending these meetings, listened attentively and took notes. But inwardly, she struggled to accept that Ava's issues could be more than just shyness or typical childhood anxieties. She shared these concerns with Jake, but given his busy schedule, their conversations on the subject were often short-lived. They would agree to give Ava more attention when they could find the time, usually after the next big project, or once things calmed down at the office. The weekends, which were supposed to be a respite, often failed to provide the quality time Ava needed. While other families spent Saturdays at parks, playgrounds, or visiting friends, the Stevens weekends were spent catching up on emails, preparing for Monday's workload, or attending events to maintain professional networks. Even when they were physically present at home, their minds remained tethered to work tasks. Ava would approach them, tugging at their sleeves with a picture she drew or asking them to read her a story. But the response was frequently, "Not now, sweetheart. We'll do it later." Later, however, seldom came. In an effort to address Ava's academic struggles, Jake and Emily decided to double down on external support. Mr. Harris, the tutor, increased the frequency of his sessions, working with Ava nearly every day after school. There was a temporary improvement in her grades, which gave Jake and Emily a sense of relief. They began to believe that they were handling things effectively, that their solution was working. It didn't occur to them that while Mr. Harris could help Ava understand math and reading, he couldn't provide the emotional nurturing she truly needed. Emily began to notice subtle changes in Ava's demeanor, particularly around the time when her tutoring sessions were scheduled. The little girl seemed tense, her usually gentle expressions replaced by a look of quiet apprehension. Emily attributed these signs to the pressure of catching up with her schoolwork. After all, Ava had always been sensitive, and perhaps she was simply feeling the weight of the expectations placed upon her. Emily didn't see these shifts as red flags, but as indicators of normal childhood stress. Jake, meanwhile, was still struggling to find the balance himself. Work remained a constant source of stress, with new projects piling up and little room to breathe. He told himself that he would find time to reconnect with his daughter as soon as things settled down. But each passing day seemed to bring more deadlines and responsibilities. There were times when he would come home late, long after Ava had gone to bed, and would quietly check on her, watching her sleep with a mixture of love and guilt. He would think about how he missed the simple moments, helping her with homework, playing with her in the backyard, or even just listening to her talk about her day. Those were things he promised himself he would start doing soon. but soon never seemed to arrive. One evening, as Jake was preparing for yet another business trip, Ava approached him with a drawing in her hand. It was a picture of their family, Jake, Emily, and Ava holding hands. But there was something odd about it. The figures of Jake and Emily were drawn much smaller and farther apart from Ava. The image struck him in a way he hadn't expected. For a moment, he was speechless, unsure of how to interpret what he was seeing. It was Emily who later explained that Ava had said something peculiar about the drawing, that her parents were always so far away. The comment lingered in Jake's mind for days afterward, an unsettling reminder that perhaps their efforts to balance work and family had been less successful than they thought. The strain was not just affecting Ava. Jake and Emily's marriage was also showing signs of wear. The shared exhaustion, the lack of meaningful communication, and the constant prioritization of work over personal life were slowly driving a wedge between them. Arguments became more frequent, usually about small things: dishes left in the sink, forgotten chores, missed phone calls. But these were merely symptoms of deeper issues that neither was ready to confront. They often found themselves talking more about logistics and schedules than about each other's feelings or Ava's well-being. There was a growing disconnect that, much like Ava's withdrawn behavior, they tried to dismiss as temporary, something that could be resolved once they had more time. Ava's situation continued to worsen, manifesting in ways that were increasingly hard to overlook. She began experiencing frequent nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night crying out for her parents. Her appetite waned, and she lost interest in activities she once enjoyed. There were days when she would cling to Emily's leg at the door, not wanting to go to school or have her tutoring sessions with Mr. Harris. When asked what was wrong, Ava would often say nothing or give vague responses about being tired or not liking school. Jake and Emily interpreted these behaviors as normal childhood resistance, believing that she would grow out of it eventually. Yet, there was a nagging feeling that something was amiss, an instinctive sense that they were missing a crucial part of the puzzle. Emily tried to spend more time with Ava, making an effort to read to her at night or ask about her day. But the conversations never seemed to go deep, and Ava's responses remained reserved, as if she was afraid of saying too much. It wasn't until Ava's school called again, this time to discuss a more serious decline in her behavior and grades, that Jake and Emily were forced to acknowledge that their approach to balancing work and family might be failing their daughter in ways they hadn't imagined. The struggle to maintain a balance had not only strained their marriage but also placed their daughter in a situation where her emotional needs were not being adequately met. The pursuit of success, once seen as a noble endeavor for the family's benefit, had come at an unforeseen cost that Jake and Emily would soon be forced to confront head-on. Despite the warning signs that surrounded them, Jake and Emily remained caught up in their careers, inadvertently overlooking Ava's growing distress. The signs were there, but they were easy to misinterpret or dismiss as part of normal childhood behavior, especially for parents whose time was already spread too thin. Ava's withdrawn demeanor, the occasional clinginess, and her lack of enthusiasm for activities that once brought her joy were all brushed aside as part of a phase. However, these were not temporary behaviors. They were indicators of something much more serious happening beneath the surface. Ava's interactions with Mr. Harris, her private tutor, became a regular part of her routine. What began as a few sessions a week gradually turned into near-daily appointments as Jake and Emily sought to address Ava's academic struggles. They trusted Mr. Harris, a well-regarded professional with experience in working with young children. His calm demeanor and apparent dedication to helping Ava gave Jake and Emily confidence that they were doing the right thing. Unfortunately, their trust was misplaced. Over time, subtle changes in Ava's behavior started to emerge, particularly around the days when her tutoring sessions took place. She often seemed anxious in the hours leading up to Mr. Harris's arrival, and after he left, she would retreat to her room, remaining quiet and withdrawn. These shifts in behavior were gradual, almost imperceptible, but there were moments that stood out, times when Ava would sit with her knees pulled to her chest, a vacant look in her eyes, as if she was trying to disappear. Emily noticed these moments but rationalized them away, convincing herself that Ava was just feeling overwhelmed with schoolwork. The nights became increasingly difficult for Ava. She began having frequent nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, crying out for her parents. Her sleep was restless, and there were dark circles under her eyes from too many sleepless nights. When Emily would rush into her room to comfort her, Ava would cling tightly, refusing to let go. When asked about the dreams, Ava struggled to articulate what was bothering her. She would simply say she was afraid, but when pressed for details, she would fall silent or change the subject. It was as if the words she needed to express her fears were just out of reach. Despite these signs, Jake and Emily continued to attribute Ava's distress to school-related stress. They believed that the increased academic expectations were likely the cause of her anxiety, or that she might be experiencing typical childhood fears that come with growing up. They were unaware that there were other, more sinister factors at play. Mr. Harris was becoming a regular figure in Ava's life, but instead of being a source of support, he was slowly, insidiously, becoming a figure of fear. There were instances when Ava would try to speak up, to say something about Mr. Harris, but her attempts were vague and easily overlooked. She might mention not wanting to have a tutoring session or say that she didn't like him. But Jake and Emily didn't give these remarks the weight they deserved. They would brush off her concerns, reassuring her that the extra help was for her own good and that it would get easier over time. They believed they were encouraging resilience and helping her push through her struggles. In reality, Ava's comments were her subtle cries for help, and each time they were dismissed, she retreated further into herself. Emily, who had taken on more of the parenting responsibilities, found herself struggling to balance her own work with the increasing demands of Ava's care. She noticed Ava's reluctance to go to her tutoring sessions, but with so many other things occupying her mind, she rationalized it as the natural resistance of a child who would rather play than study. There were small clues, moments when Ava would flinch at a sudden movement or recoil when someone touched her shoulder. But in the rush of daily life, these were overlooked, seen as nothing more than quirks or an overactive imagination. The situation reached a point where even Ava's teachers could see that something was deeply wrong. Her grades continued to decline, and she seemed perpetually on edge, as if she was bracing herself for something terrible. During a parent-teacher conference, one of Ava's instructors mentioned that she had noticed unusual behavior in the young girl. Ava would sometimes sit quietly in the classroom, staring blankly at her desk instead of engaging with her peers. Her once lively spirit appeared to be dimming, replaced by a timid and fearful disposition. These conversations should have been a wake-up call for Jake and Emily, but they were so deeply engrossed in their careers that they failed to grasp the severity of the situation. They assured the teachers that Ava was just going through a rough patch and that the extra tutoring sessions would soon pay off. Their faith in external solutions, such as hiring a tutor or sending Ava to a better school, blinded them to the reality that their daughter's well-being was slipping away. Right in front of them, Ava's physical health began to show signs of distress as well. There were days when she would complain of stomach aches, headaches, or an overall sense of not feeling well. These symptoms often coincided with days when Mr. Harris was scheduled to come over. At first, Jake and Emily thought she might be trying to avoid her lessons, using these complaints as excuses to get out of doing schoolwork. They did not see them for what they were, indicators of deep-seated anxiety and fear. There were also bruises that appeared on Ava's arms and legs, which she couldn't explain. When Emily noticed them, she initially thought they might have come from playing or from minor accidents at school. After all, children do tend to get bruises. But when the bruises became more frequent and seemed to appear without any clear cause, Emily began to grow more concerned. She questioned Ava, asking if she had fallen or if someone had hurt her. But Ava would always shake her head, her voice barely above a whisper as she said, "I'm fine." It was around this time that Emily began to sense a deeper issue, but struggled to pinpoint its source. Jake, who remained occupied with his own professional demands, was harder to reach emotionally. The few moments they spent discussing Ava's behavior were usually brief, and left Emily feeling more isolated in her concerns. She knew something was wrong but didn't know how to confront it. She thought about speaking with Mr. Harris directly to ask if he had noticed anything unusual during the tutoring sessions, but ultimately decided against it, fearing that it would come across as questioning his professionalism. The tipping point came when Ava's school principal, Mrs. Williams, noticed a particularly large bruise on Ava's upper arm during recess. She pulled Ava aside gently and asked her how she had gotten it. Ava hesitated, her eyes downcast, before mumbling something about bumping into a desk. The explanation seemed rehearsed, and Mrs. Williams's intuition told her that there was more to the story. She contacted Jake and Emily immediately, urging them to take Ava for a medical evaluation to rule out any serious issues. At the hospital, a doctor examined Ava and asked a series of questions about how the bruises had occurred. Ava's answers were inconsistent, her gaze darting nervously around the room. The doctor recommended a more thorough examination, including psychological evaluation, to determine if there might be an underlying cause for the symptoms that extended beyond physical health. It was here, in this moment of vulnerability, that the full extent of what Ava had been enduring began to come to light. The call from the school principal had shaken Jake and Emily, but nothing could have prepared them for the reality that awaited. Following Mrs. Williams' recommendation, they took Ava to a nearby hospital for a more thorough examination. They thought it would be a routine checkup, expecting the doctor to reassure them that Ava was simply going through the bumps and bruises of childhood. However, as the evaluation progressed, the atmosphere shifted from one of casual concern to a deeper, more troubling sense of urgency. The medical team conducted a series of tests, checking not only for physical injuries, but also probing into Ava's psychological state. The doctor asked questions gently but persistently, trying to uncover any possible causes behind her frequent complaints of pain and the unusual bruises. Ava responded hesitantly, offering vague explanations that seemed to dance around the truth. She would glance at her parents nervously, her little hands fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. It was clear that she was withholding something, but the full extent of what that was remained unclear. The breakthrough came when the child psychologist assigned to Ava's case sat down with her for a private session. The psychologist employed various techniques to make Ava feel at ease, engaging her in playful activities to encourage openness. Gradually, Ava began to speak, though at first, her words were fragmented and difficult to piece together. But then, slowly, the story started to emerge, and what it revealed was far darker than anyone could have anticipated. Ava described feeling scared during her tutoring sessions with Mr. Harris, and she hesitated to say much more. It took the psychologist's gentle reassurance for her to eventually share that Mr. Harris had been hurting her. The things she described were not just physical discomforts, but acts that went beyond any reasonable explanation for a child's injuries. Her voice was soft, barely audible at times, but the weight of her words was undeniable. The psychologist documented everything and immediately contacted Jake and Emily, advising them that the situation required the involvement of Child Protective Services and law enforcement. The news hit Jake and Emily like a bolt of lightning. It was an emotional blow that left them stunned, guilty, and devastated all at once. How had they missed this? How had they failed to protect their daughter? The flood of emotions that overcame them was overwhelming. There was the inevitable surge of anger toward Mr. Harris, but also a deep sense of shame and self-reproach. The signs had been there, but they had been too caught up in their own lives to connect the dots. The pieces of the puzzle, which had seemed unrelated before, now fell into place, forming a picture they could scarcely bear to look at. Jake struggled to keep his composure as he tried to process what Ava had shared. He had always believed that by providing for his family financially, he was doing his duty as a father. But now, as he sat in that sterile hospital room, he was forced to confront the reality that he had been absent in the most important way. His mind replayed countless moments, Ava's reluctance to go to her tutoring sessions, the way she clung to Emily at night, her drawings that depicted the family so far apart. These were not random incidents. They had been Ava's way of trying to communicate her suffering, but her cries for help had gone unheard. Emily, too, was engulfed by a wave of guilt. She had been the one who managed Ava's daily routine and oversaw the tutoring arrangements. As a mother, she felt an innate responsibility to protect her child, and the realization that she had unknowingly placed Ava in harm's way was unbearable. The what-ifs plagued her thoughts. What if she had asked more questions, spent more time with Ava, or paid closer attention to her discomfort around Mr. Harris? Each missed opportunity to uncover the truth now weighed heavily on her conscience. The authorities were notified, and a full investigation was launched. Mr. Harris was questioned by the police, but upon hearing that suspicions were being raised, he disappeared, leaving behind no forwarding address. Law enforcement issued a warrant for his arrest, and his description was circulated to local jurisdictions and national databases. The search for him intensified as more information about his past began to surface. It turned out that Mr. Harris had previously worked at other tutoring centers where there were rumors of misconduct, but no formal complaints had ever been filed. He had managed to slip through the cracks of the system multiple times, leaving a trail of potential victims in his wake. As the investigation unfolded, Jake and Emily found themselves entangled in a legal and emotional ordeal. They were now not only parents to a traumatized child, but also participants in a complex legal battle seeking justice for Ava. The weight of this responsibility bore down on them heavily. Their initial shock turned into a relentless pursuit to make things right, though they knew no amount of legal action could truly undo the damage that had been done. The process of gathering evidence and preparing for court was grueling. Ava's statements were taken by child psychologists who specialized in interviewing young victims, ensuring that the legal proceedings would not further traumatize her. Her words were treated with the utmost care, and the recorded interviews served as critical evidence against Mr. Harris. Meanwhile, Jake and Emily underwent a separate investigation to determine if there had been negligence on their part and whether Ava should remain in their custody. Although it was ultimately concluded that their failure to recognize the signs did not amount to legal neglect, the couple felt a profound sense of moral failure. News of the case began to spread throughout the community, drawing mixed reactions. Some sympathized with Jake and Emily, understanding that they had trusted a seemingly qualified professional and that their busy lives had blinded them to the warning signs. Others were less forgiving, criticizing them for prioritizing their careers over their daughter's well-being. The scrutiny was difficult to bear, but Jake and Emily knew that no amount of external judgment could compare to the self-criticism they already carried. In the weeks that followed, as legal proceedings continued, Jake and Emily made the difficult decision to step away from their jobs temporarily. They knew that Ava needed them now more than ever, and work had become secondary to the task of helping her heal. They enrolled in parenting classes and attended therapy sessions to learn how to support a child who had experienced trauma. It was a humbling experience, one that forced them to reevaluate not just their roles as parents, but also their definition of success and fulfillment. The case against Mr. Harris finally came to a conclusion after months of searching. He was located in another state and apprehended by law enforcement. In court, the evidence presented was damning, leaving little room for doubt about his guilt. He was convicted of multiple charges and sentenced to life imprisonment. For Jake and Emily, there was a sense of relief in knowing that justice had been served. But this was only the beginning of a long path to healing for Ava and their family. The entire ordeal had left scars that would not fade easily. Ava was enrolled in specialized therapy to help her process the trauma and rebuild her sense of safety. Jake and Emily also sought counseling to work through their feelings of guilt, anger, and grief. They realized that while they could not change the past, they could commit to being better in the present and future. Their priorities shifted fundamentally, and they vowed never to let their careers overshadow the importance of being present for their daughter again. The path to recovery was not linear. There were good days and difficult days, moments of progress and setbacks. But through it all, Jake, Emily, and Ava slowly began to find a new kind of strength. One that emerged not from professional achievements or material success, but from the resilience of the human spirit and the bonds that held them together. With Mr. Harris now behind bars, a semblance of justice had been served. But the true work of rebuilding was only just beginning. The emotional, legal, and familial consequences of the ordeal had created an immense challenge for Jake and Emily, one that would require more than just time to overcome. The legal proceedings, although concluded, had left a lasting impact on the family, particularly on Ava, whose sense of safety had been shattered. It was now up to her parents to help her navigate the path to healing, while also coming to terms with their own feelings of guilt and responsibility. In the aftermath of the trial, Jake and Emily found themselves facing a series of legal and social hurdles that extended beyond Mr. Harris's sentencing. The family's life had been turned upside down by the investigation, and despite being cleared of any legal wrongdoing, the couple remained under scrutiny. Child Protective Services continued to monitor Ava's well-being to ensure that her environment was safe and conducive to healing. While there were no longer any concerns about her physical safety, there was a need to address the emotional scars that had formed as a result of the abuse and the prolonged period of neglect. To help Ava recover, Jake and Emily enrolled her in specialized trauma-focused therapy. The sessions were designed to provide a safe space for Ava to express her feelings, learn coping mechanisms, and slowly rebuild her sense of trust in the world. Her therapist used a variety of techniques, including play therapy and art therapy, to help Ava communicate what words often failed to convey. These sessions were crucial in helping Ava to process the events she had endured and begin the long journey towards emotional recovery. However, progress was slow and often painful. There were days when Ava would refuse to speak about her experiences, retreating into herself, and other days when she would express a burst of anger or sadness that seemed to come out of nowhere. For Jake and Emily, seeing their daughter struggle was a constant reminder of their own shortcomings as parents. They couldn't help but replay the events in their minds, analyzing every decision that had led them to this point. It was easy to get lost in the what-ifs. What if they had paid more attention? What if they had listened more closely? What if they had taken her complaints about Mr. Harris seriously? These questions haunted them, but they also recognized that dwelling on the past would not change it. Instead, they resolved to use this experience as a catalyst for change, not just in their approach to parenting, but in their overall outlook on life. The couple took a leave of absence from their jobs, realizing that they needed to focus entirely on their family's recovery. It was a difficult decision, as their careers had always been a significant part of their identities, but they now understood that being present for Ava was far more important than any professional achievement. Jake and Emily also began attending therapy sessions together and individually. For the first time, they confronted the emotional distance that had grown between them over the years, a distance that had contributed to their failure to see the signs of Ava's distress. In therapy, they were forced to examine the ways in which their pursuit of success had affected their family dynamic. They realized that while they had always believed they were working hard for their family, their actions often communicated the opposite. The long hours, the frequent business trips, and the constant attachment to their phones had sent a message to Ava that work was more important than she was. This realization was a painful one, but it was also the first step toward making meaningful changes. The couple enrolled in parenting classes that focused on rebuilding trust with their child and understanding the unique needs of children who have experienced trauma. These classes were eye-opening, providing them with new tools to communicate with Ava and respond to her needs in a way that was both supportive and empathetic. They learned about the importance of creating a stable routine, setting boundaries that made Ava feel secure, and giving her space to express her emotions without fear of being dismissed or misunderstood. Jake and Emily also took steps to change their lifestyle, making sure that their careers no longer dominated their lives. They downsized their home, moving from their spacious house in an upscale neighborhood to a more modest residence closer to Ava's new school and support network. The decision to downsize was not just practical but symbolic. It marked a shift in their values, a move away from material success and toward a life centered around connection and well-being. With fewer financial obligations, they were able to spend more time with Ava, focusing on activities that helped her regain a sense of normalcy, such as family dinners, trips to the park, and quiet moments reading together at night. The community, too, played a role in the family's recovery. Initially, there had been whispers and judgments from neighbors and acquaintances who questioned how Jake and Emily could have missed the signs of abuse. However, as the couple became more open about their experiences and the steps they were taking to make amends, they found unexpected support from friends, relatives, and even parents from Ava's new school. People reached out to share their own stories of struggle and redemption, offering a reminder that while mistakes had been made, there was still hope for healing. For Ava, the road to recovery remained challenging, with setbacks that tested the family's resilience. There were nights when the nightmares returned, and she would wake up in tears, her small frame trembling as she clung to her parents. In those moments, Jake and Emily would hold her close, whispering words of comfort and reassurance, letting her know that she was safe and loved. They learned that healing was not a linear process, but a journey that involved moments of progress as well as regression. Yet, with each passing day, Ava grew a little stronger. Her smiles became more frequent, and the light in her eyes that had once dimmed began to shine again. The ordeal also inspired Jake and Emily to advocate for changes in the systems that had allowed Mr. Harris to continue working with children despite previous suspicions. They began volunteering with organizations dedicated to preventing child abuse and supporting families in crisis. By sharing their story, they hope to raise awareness about the importance of recognizing the signs of abuse and the need for more stringent regulations regarding the hiring of professionals who work with children. Their advocacy efforts became a way for them to transform their guilt and pain into something constructive, helping others avoid the mistakes they had made. In time, the family began to find a new kind of strength, one that was built not on external success, but on the bonds of love and resilience that had carried them through the darkest times. They made a promise to each other and to Ava that they would never let life's demands come between them again. The path ahead was still uncertain, but they knew that as long as they faced it together, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. As the dust began to settle and the immediate legal battles drew to a close, Jake, Emily, and Ava faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives from the emotional wreckage left behind. Though justice had been served in the courtroom, healing was a different kind of struggle, one that would take patience, time, and tremendous effort. The journey ahead was not only about addressing Ava's trauma, but also about redefining the meaning of family and rediscovering the love and trust that had been lost along the way. Jake and Emily's first step in this process was to reestablish a sense of stability in Ava's life. Her trauma-focused therapy continued to be a cornerstone of her healing, providing her with a safe space to express her emotions and learn to cope with her experiences. The sessions often involved creative approaches like art and play therapy, which allowed Ava to communicate in ways that didn't rely solely on verbal expression. These therapeutic techniques helped her process complex emotions, giving her the tools to confront and slowly let go of the fear that had once consumed her. Outside of therapy, Jake and Emily worked to create a home environment where Ava felt secure and loved. They implemented a consistent daily routine, which included simple but meaningful activities like preparing breakfast together, playing board games in the evening, and reading bedtime stories every night. These routines served not only to reassure Ava, but also to rebuild the emotional bond between her and her parents, reminding her that she was not alone in her struggles. For Jake and Emily, the process of healing was also about facing their own feelings of guilt and self-blame. Therapy had helped them acknowledge that while they could not change the past, they could influence the future by being fully present for Ava and making better choices moving forward. They made a conscious decision to prioritize family over work, even if that meant sacrificing professional opportunities. This commitment was evident in the small but significant changes they made to their daily lives, such as turning off their phones during family time, limiting business travel, and finding roles that allowed for more flexible schedules. The couple also continued their own therapy, where they explored the emotional distance that had developed in their relationship over the years. They came to realize that their shared focus on career advancement had contributed to a slow erosion of intimacy, as they had lost sight of the little things that nurtured their connection. Now, as they walked this difficult road together, they rediscovered the importance of open communication, not just about Ava's needs, but also about their own. They started setting aside time to talk about their day, their feelings, and the future they wanted to build, strengthening the foundation of their marriage in the process. Rebuilding trust with Ava was a delicate and ongoing process. Initially, there were moments of hesitation when she interacted with her parents, as if she was testing whether their attention and concern were truly sincere. She had become accustomed to their busy schedules and had learned to expect that work would often come first. Now she was beginning to see a different side of them, one where they were more present, more attuned to her needs, and more willing to prioritize her above all else. With time, Ava began to respond positively to these changes, her small gestures of affection gradually returning. She would reach for Jake's hand when they walked together, or curl up next to Emily on the couch, seeking comfort in their closeness. The progress was not without setbacks. There were times when Ava would retreat into herself, particularly when something triggered a memory of the past. Certain situations, like a loud noise or an unexpected change in plans, could cause her to become withdrawn or anxious. Jake and Emily learned to navigate these moments with care, offering reassurance without overwhelming her. They practiced techniques suggested by her therapist, such as grounding exercises to help Ava stay present and calm. These approaches allowed Ava to regain a sense of control over her emotions, empowering her to face her fears step by step. The couple also found that reconnecting as a family involved embracing the things they had previously overlooked or undervalued. Simple outdoor activities like hiking, visiting the beach, or spending an afternoon at the local park took on new significance. They learned to appreciate these experiences not as distractions from their busy lives, but as vital components of their family's well-being. Jake discovered a newfound passion for gardening, something he and Ava could do together, while Emily took up painting, a hobby that allowed her to bond with Ava over shared creativity. As the family grew closer, the bond between Jake and Emily also deepened. Their relationship had been tested by circumstances that might have torn others apart, but in the end, they found strength in facing the challenges together. They realized that the love they had for one another had been overshadowed by the demands of their careers, and now they were determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Date nights became a regular occurrence, not because they were scheduled, but because they genuinely wanted to spend time together. They found joy in each other's company again, laughing and reminiscing about happier times, while also dreaming about the future they hoped to create. For Ava, the journey of rebuilding wasn't just about healing from the trauma, but also about discovering who she was outside of her experiences. Her parents encouraged her to explore different hobbies and interests, allowing her to try everything from soccer to drawing classes to music lessons. This exploration helped Ava develop a sense of identity and confidence that had been overshadowed by her struggles. She took pride in her accomplishments, however small, and with each new activity, she found a piece of herself that had been missing. The family also reached out to support groups for parents and children who had faced similar experiences. These groups offered a sense of community and understanding that was invaluable in their healing process. Hearing the stories of others who had walked similar paths helped Jake and Emily realize that they were not alone in their struggles, and it provided Ava with an opportunity to connect with other children who understood what she was going through. These interactions fostered a sense of solidarity and hope, reminding them that recovery was not only possible but within reach. The transformation of their lives was not instantaneous, nor was it free from difficulty. There were still hard days, moments of frustration, and times when progress seemed slow or non-existent. Yet, the family learned to celebrate the small victories: an untroubled night's sleep for Ava, a peaceful dinner without distractions, or a spontaneous moment of laughter shared between them. These achievements, though modest, were proof that healing was happening, one step at a time. As the months turned into years, the family emerged stronger and more connected than ever. Jake and Emily had come to understand that their success was not measured by career accolades or financial achievements, but by the love and resilience that bound them together. Ava, too, had grown, not just in age but in strength and courage. She had learned to trust again, to open her heart to joy, and to believe in the goodness of life despite the shadows of the past. Through their shared experiences, the family discovered that true healing comes not from erasing the scars, but from embracing them as part of the journey. The scars served as a reminder of where they had been, but they did not define where they were going. Jake, Emily, and Ava found a new purpose in living for each other, committed to nurturing the bonds that had been tested and ultimately strengthened by adversity. The journey that Jake, Emily, and Ava undertook was one of profound transformation. It was a path that began with ambition and career aspirations, but was ultimately redirected by an ordeal that tested the very foundation of their family. Through the struggle to overcome trauma, heal from emotional wounds, and rebuild fractured bonds, the family emerged stronger, wiser, and more deeply connected. They learned that true success is not measured by accolades or material possessions, but by the love, resilience, and presence shared with the ones we hold dear. Jake and Emily had once believed that providing for their family meant securing a future through financial stability and career accomplishments. Yet, as they walked the difficult road of healing alongside Ava, they realized that what mattered most could not be earned through hard work or professional dedication alone. Being present, listening with empathy, and valuing time spent together were the real measures of a successful life. These were the qualities that nurtured Ava's recovery and breathed new life into their marriage. As they looked back on the experiences that had brought them to this point, they acknowledged the mistakes they made, but chose not to dwell on them. Instead, they viewed these moments as powerful lessons that had reshaped their perspectives and priorities. The couple promised themselves and Ava that they would never let the demands of life take precedence over their family again. They vowed to remain committed to nurturing the bonds they had worked so hard to rebuild, understanding that the love they shared was their greatest achievement. Ava, too, carried her own lessons forward. Though she was young, her experiences had taught her resilience and the strength to confront life's challenges with courage. She understood that healing is a process, one that may not follow a straight path, but can still lead to a place of light and hope. Her parents had shown her through their actions that she was valued, cherished, and protected. With their love as a constant presence, she continued to grow, slowly but surely, into a confident and joyful young girl. The family's journey did not end with the resolution of Ava's case or the closing of the courtroom doors. It extended into every day that followed as they continued to rebuild trust, celebrate small victories, and find meaning in the simple joys of life. They embraced the philosophy that healing is not about forgetting the past, but about finding the strength to move forward despite it. For Jake and Emily, this meant creating a life that balanced their responsibilities with the commitment to being fully present for each other. And for Ava, their story serves as a reminder to us all about the importance of recognizing the signs of distress in our loved ones and the value of being present in their lives. It teaches us that no amount of professional success can replace the irreplaceable bond of family. The pursuit of career goals, while important, should never overshadow the moments that truly matter, those spent with the people we love, the memories we create together, and the support we offer during life's most challenging times. As Jake, Emily, and Ava looked to the future, they did so with hope, knowing that the bonds they had forged in adversity were stronger than ever. They knew that life would continue to present challenges, but they also knew that together, there was nothing they could not overcome. They had faced the darkness and come out the other side, not unscathed, but undeniably stronger. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. To all who have followed this story, let it be an inspiration to reflect on what truly matters in your own life. May you take a moment to hug your loved ones a little tighter, listen a little more intently, and prioritize the things that cannot be replaced. If this story has touched your heart or made you think, We invite you to subscribe to our channel for more content that seeks to inspire and uplift. And if you feel moved, share a message in the comments, such as, "I choose to be fully present for the ones I love." Your words could bring comfort or encouragement to someone who needs it today. If this journey resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that speaks to the heart. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or a message of hope. Together, let's continue to spread compassion, love, and resilience. Thank you for watching. And remember, never let life's demands take away from the time you spend with those who matter most.